Hey y'all. Hey. Welcome to the Octavia Butler mixtape course. Today we are wrapping up Butler's Parable of the Talents, which is the second series, the last book of the second series that we're gonna read in this class. So how y'all doing? Please like the live as you come on in. If y'all want to be part of the panel, you know what to do. Hit the two people at the bottom. We've made it through. Y'all just finished eating dinner. That's why I was a little late. Now I got a little dinner. I got something in my teeth, but we didn't made it. Now we do have to kind of figure out if we want to go into the Xenogenesis trilogy or not. And then we have to decide how we're going to go into it. Like, do we want to do a week off and then, kind of do the same thing that we did for the parable series, like do a week off and then come back with, y'all know what I'm talking about. So we got to decide that because one, your girl tired. Like, I ain't even gonna hold you. I'm a little tired. So I can use a break, but I want to hear everyone else's thoughts. So we may just do that towards the end of the class. Because the last time we did it, we spent a lot of time doing it at the front end, and I don't want to do that. So please like the live as you are coming in. Of course, I'm gonna, since we finished the book, and I know last week we left off on me critiquing Lauren. I still stand by what I said. Okay. I still stand beside my critique, but I want to read you something from Butler as we wait for a few more people to come on in. And this comes from a 2000 interview on persistence. It's titled Persistence, and the interviewer is Charles Brown. And this is Butler speaking. She says, one of the reasons my character Lauren opts out of the interstellar travel is let me slow down because I'm always tired when I'm trying to read. One of the reasons my character Lauren opts for interstellar travel is it's a major distraction. And when the kid just absolutely wants to run the streets, you got to find a way to distract him, which is, I guess, a female way of looking at the human species. The lack of empathy, or worse, the trivialization of empathy, is the real problem. That's why at the end of Talents, my character says, I know what I have done. She does not feel that she's set everything right and they are going to some paradise in the sky. She recognizes that probably a lot of them are going to die and they're just taking their problems with them. But she hopes the distraction of surviving on another world will enable them slowly to grow into something better. Can we grow into something better? Probably not, while the worst behavior is rewarded. And here on Earth, the worst behavior is rewarded. In a world where if you behave really badly, take over and make everybody else miserable, you'll probably kill off the whole colony. They'll either manage not to do things like that and survive, or they won't and they'll die. So the reason why I wanted to read that is ultimately the last part where she says that I know what I have done. And she knows that she's not giving them a full solution. She knows that they're probably going to go to space and die and not, hold on, I'm trying to let somebody come up here, and not survive in the way that she had imagined. So she does not go. And we see at the end, she does not go. Now we could read her not going, whichever way we decide to read it. But according to Butler, she realizes the the shortcomings of her sight. One thing that I was reading, that I was thinking about as I was reading this book for whatever time this is about space travel and space tourism, and how, a lot of people were very angry at, Jeff Bezos' crew that, Gayle King was a part of when they went to space and did this space tourism. And I'm wondering if we have the same energy for Lauren and her vision, and do we see it as problematic when there are so many problems on Earth, or do we still see it as it's okay? I guess that's something that I was thinking about. This should also put you in mind of Survivor, this book and how it ends. And I argue that Butler did not complete everything that she wanted to in Survivor. We already know why she rescinded the text, but she got better at it here. And when we get to Dawn, if we do read the Xenogenesis trilogy, we'll see that she was able to master the thought, right, that she started in Survivor. So we can start wherever y'all want. I guess I want to hear you all's thoughts about Parable of the Talents, first readers, or whatever y'all want to, whichever way y'all want to start. How we feel about the text?
Start. I'm not feeling 100%, so I'll start and then I'll probably just drop.
Okay.
But I really, after reading Sower, I put it down and I started Talents, but I just could not read it back to back in 2020, I think. And I'm glad I'm reading it now as opposed to then, but I feel hopeful. I mean, this book ended for me on a note of hope that I didn't expect. Um, with so much torture and tragedy going on in the beginning and the middle of the book, I did not expect it to end on this hopeful note. And I really, really appreciated that. Also, there's a lot I can say about the individual characters, but I'm really happy that, I was able to push through the difficulties and really, finish this book and because it ended on, it gave me a sense of hope, honestly, for where we are now and, what's possible in the future. So,
Okay. I hope you feel better.
thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. Yeah, I don't think the book is ended horribly or negatively. Like the middle was very, very hard to read last week. I do think there are elements of hope. I do think that Lauren had a good vision, though I'm still critical of her motives in a lot of ways. And it did have a different tone. Like ending this series had a different tone than us ending the Patternist series, right? It felt different when we ended this one. Okay. Before y'all jump in, don't mention Mark yet. Tell me how y'all feel other than mentioning Mark. Go.
That's what I want.
Hello, everyone. I agree. I would like to talk about Mark too, but I'll hold it.
Oh, good day.
Hold Mark, because I know we ain't gonna never get off of Mark.
Hold my mule.
Okay. Anything else but Mark?
This is my second reread. I read it back in 2020.
Okay.
So this is my second time reading the book. I enjoyed the book, even though in the middle it was very tough, and that it was really tough the first time I read it too. And I didn't read it again until this class for that very reason. It got really, really dark with the collars and them just being taken over, Acorn being taken over. But I enjoyed the book overall, and I feel like I can see how she developed as a writer compared to some of her other books, because I feel like this book was more fleshed out. There was a lot of details, her world building. I feel like she did a lot better than maybe the Patternist series. I also feel like Talents in particular was one of her longer books. Some of the other series you might get, 200 pages, a little over 200. But I feel like if she went along with the pace that she went with her other books, this could have been broken up into two books. Like maybe after they were set free from their enslavers, that could have ended the book, and then another book would have been into her, I guess, reestablishing Earthseed.
Yeah. So there was a Parable of the Trickster that never got written, but yes, point taken.
So overall, I did like it. I do feel like since we're holding off on Mark, there's some other things I want to say, but I do feel like she got to examine some relationships.
Okay.
I feel like not just this book, but in her other books as well, the mother-daughter relationship always seems to struggle. She struggles to write a successful mother-daughter relationship, and I don't know what her relationship was with her mother. I know you said that last week her mother passed suddenly, so she was going through some of that
Mm-hmm.
grief and maybe anger of her passing. But it just
Mm-hmm.
seems like Larkin had a dislike, maybe even a resentment for Lauren.
Mm-hmm.
So it was interesting to see that dynamic and the brother and sister dynamic, even relationship dynamics. Lauren really didn't have a love interest in this book. And I feel like this may be one of the only series where the protagonist does not really have a love interest. Her husband had passed away in the previous book. So that was an interesting new take.
Well, he passed away in talent.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Mm-hmm.
you're right, he did.
But earlier
So
on.
early, very early in the book, he had passed away.
Yeah.
But most of the book, she did not have a love interest and she wasn't really looking to start that. So we got to see different sides of her and her really pressing Earthseed. So yeah, I enjoyed it.
Okay. Points taken. Yeah, and even the budding affection that she had for a woman was quickly shut down in the interest of Earthseed, right? Yeah, I remember that scene where she's like, well, this is probably the first woman, the first person I've considered being with since Camp Christian, and it was a woman, and she sacrificed that because I think that's the woman where she said, I'm gonna bring the children to her, which is very Doro like. I'm gonna let it ride though. All right, y'all. Who else?
So for me, what this book did is remind me of why I love Octavia Butler so much.
Okay.
As somebody who reads almost exclusively nothing but speculative fiction, um, a lot of times, at least before I started just getting to, just speculative fiction in general, it's always centered around men. It's always centered around if sometimes they're centered around mostly white men, and the women never seem to have any kind of like thought. I mean, it's all surface. It's always something where they have to be rescued or whatever else. And so the thing I liked about this book, and like it did end on a positive note, which I love, because God knows I by that middle part just always messes me up. Um,
Yeah.
was was the idea of this is a black heroine in this book, and she can be selfish and she can be short-sighted and she can be all of these things, but she still is the protagonist. She still is the center point of this. um, I thought for me, having this long journey with her, that has been one of the things I like most. Like she's her these women, flawed and everything, they survive all of the crap that's happening. Some of the decisions you may not agree with, you might not be in the same line. And I find that refreshing because a lot of times it's always dependent on some man.
Mm-hmm.
If the man doesn't do something or doesn't come and rescue or doesn't do something or something else within herself, there, it isn't there.
Mm-hmm.
It isn't there. And like even with I hated the whole age gap, 19 to 100 years old, whatever. I hated the whole age gap. But generally when they have the age gap, she's like resting, waiting for him to come, give her some experience or rescue her from something, or it's always where the guys, has something that he's going to be able to give or make, or like make her successful or whatever else. She came, even though she was to me a little childish in some of this was her, not him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Butler is clearing her notes, and this is something that is universal in all of her books, that she doesn't create weak women characters. She does not create women characters who cannot rise above. She does not create women characters who are helpless. Now, their power may look different, but they too are power. And she also, in a lot of her notes, she's talking about they're not helpless, they're not victims, right? And though they may be, experience hardship, things of that nature, they are not victims. And if you find the power, if you find the strength to do something, you can overcome. And I think that was her goal, right? She was always very careful. I was trying to find the passage in my notes, but I can't keyword search it for some reason. But she was trying to fight her own pessimism about the world, about women, about men. And so, of course, you kind of got that in Parable of the Talents, where, you're picking up some of the good attributes of Lauren and how they are able to create this marginal community that is able to survive. And she does thrive. She does do it. She does the thing. And I think that is something to be said, right? That she achieves her childhood goal, her childhood dream, or her childhood purpose. Even though she says that we all have potential, we get to choose purpose in a way. She does achieve that thing. And I think that is something to be said. And I think Butler sees herself in Lauren for doing that. Butler has this childhood dream that people didn't really believe in her. She wanted to be a writer. They wanted her to be a secretary and do more conventional female things. And she always wanted to be a writer. And so I guess in a way, if Lauren achieves her childhood goal, that is also reminiscent of Butler's life of achieving her childhood goal, to become a writer. So, okay, I'll give you that. And the men are not at the forefront. I'll give you that too. Yes, that's good. Okay. Anybody else?
Okay. Oh, sorry. I'll wait.
Oh, you can go ahead. Oh,
Okay. Thanks. I guess since we can't talk about Mark, and I can't put my foot on his neck right now because I'm on vacation, and I said the only thing I need to do, I have to be in the room at 5 o'clock because I have things to say. But I was a little confused because I really waited because her daughter held she seemed to just something much worse than anything I saw. I kept waiting for something really bad that Lauren had done to the daughter, but it was like it was never even discussed that, after this happened, we were slaves. And after that happened, I started looking for you. We started looking for you. I went to my brother and I tried to ask him to reach out. And okay, nope. We're not going to talk about that. But I guess I was just a little confused at why she was so just. I guess I'm at a loss for the word that I'm looking for. But she was just so unhappy with her mother. Guess that I don't see what she did. I don't see what Lauren did that was so bad, because she made so many efforts. She held the handprints and the footprints with her for so many years. And, there's only so many things with the way things were in the book that you can find the children. Their names were changed. They were given to people, who knows. And by the time Larkin actually finds Lauren, she was living in New York. So I guess I don't see her grievance.
Yeah, I think that, as Butler said in her notes, and I share kind of that these are Larkin and Earthsea are siblings, and as a result of them being siblings, one of them is going to win, and that's what I kind of alluded to last week. And of course, we understand why she had more time with Earthsea than she did with Larkin. We're gonna get there, but I think that what I know about writing in traumatic situations, and this is just studying Black writers from kind of Frederick Douglass's writings, there are moments in his text where the sentence structure gets very tight. It gets very tight because it's like I have to separate my emotion from this matter of fact telling. And so what you're picking up on is this matter of fact, distant, cold telling to get the story out. But still you understand the grief that's underlying her writing, Larkin's writing. And so as someone said in the chat that she felt like she chose Earthseed over her, and even we don't know what really happened behind her scenes after the fact, but we do know that Larkin is writing after she had met her mother, right? She's writing all of this
Right.
down and reporting all of this stuff after she had met her. So maybe Lauren was still so wrapped up in nurturing this baby and nurturing this dream that she felt that you could have did more to find me. I don't know. I'm speculating. But if you look at the nurture and the care that maybe, I think someone in the chat just said, like, sometimes children are jealous of their mother's careers. If you look at the nurture and the care, you feel like you could have given that to me, right?
Oh, that is very true with the children being jealous of their mother's careers. But if she had had a chance to find her, and instead of Larkin just saying that, because you could see that there was a jealousy between the two, but I don't know if she ever thoroughly was put up against the two side by side. Now, I did see Doro. Um, Maybe not as much as I would have thought I would, but as she was traveling along, and it was just a couple of them, and they were traveling along, and they stopped at the different houses, and she was like, "Oh, well, this is what I could use them for, and this is what I can use this person for." I'm like, "Oh, there's Doro."
Yeah, and I think that there's this part. It was, and it was chapter 18, where Larkin does this read of Lauren, and she says she had always been willing to sacrifice others to what she believed was right. She recognized that last characteristic in Uncle Mark, but I don't think she ever saw it clearly in herself, right? And so it's that we can either be looking at this from this child, Larkin, the inner child is writing this, and the adult Larkin is analyzing it at the same time. Or we can look at this as just this traumatic thing that maybe something happened when they met and she still wasn't willing to budge and give Larkin that time. We don't know. Butler didn't write it, but she was still committed to this Earthseed. Even though the first ships had launched, she was still committed to this thing, even unto death. You know what I mean? So there is something there. There's a childhood abandonment that we
Absolutely. Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you, Christy. We're going to get to Mark in a minute, everybody. McSam, hey.
Yeah, so I think I finished the book in April, and I initially thought it was really cheerful and happy and such a good ending. But now that what you said, the ending is a little more dark from like that reading, because she says, "I know what I've done," and you've sort of alluded to the fact that she knows that some people are going to die and it's not going to be successful. And so I think with that in mind, and you said like there was plans for The Trickster, and like it was supposed to be a series, so not just a trilogy, but there's supposed to be others after that. And I read that Butler, she just found it so depressing that she just couldn't continue even writing it anymore. So I do think it was going to get a lot darker, especially the part where she says the first ship to go off into space was called the Christopher Columbus, which is so dark, like if you think about it. And she even says, I objected to that name, and I completely understand why. I mean, if you carry an ideology like that into space, the ideology is going to live. And if you think about who Christopher Columbus is and what he did, then it's just going to repeat even in space. So that's a really dark thought. But just the ending, I love that she got to see it, what she wanted fulfilled. I'm glad, she sued Christian America, countersued them, whatever, and she got a bunch of money, and she was able to like have this sort of nice life in New York, be here about Harry, and he has children. So I really like the ending. That's nice, but you kind of threw a wrench in it when you were like,
Sorry.
I know what I've done. It's like, oh, like you can see it's not going to be as blissful as you initially thought.
Yeah. And I think that to that point, one thing that I just could not get over is, your vision went, but you didn't go. They didn't still need you on Earth. There were already Earthsea colonies and communities. You could have went, right? But you didn't go. And why didn't you go? And of course we can say, oh, she was old, where there were other old people there too. But you chickened out. You in my mind, you sowed this dream. You sowed the seed, right? Earthsea was the seed. You allowed it to mature. You got the you caused these people to believe in this vision. And when it was time to step fully into the vision, the leader did not lead. The leader stayed back and let them go. There's something weird about that. And I think that when we get to, not Parable, Dawn, that Dawn picks up or hints at, no, Dawn picks up in space, but it hints at the destiny of Parable of the Talents.
When she says, I know what I've done, I don't look at it as her saying, I've done this negative and this, and it doesn't for me foreshadow this ominous thing. It's looking at the fullness of her life, the full body of her work from start to finish, and having a realistic look at it and being able to say, I know what I've accomplished. I know what I've asked of people. I know the sacrifices I've made. I know the sacrifices I've asked people to make, and I'm settled with it, and I'm okay with not necessarily going. Which that harkens back to me when I look at and my ancestors who, and our ancestors in general who may have fought for freedom, knowing that they might not see the day and knowing that they might not get to that point they might not actually see freedom, but they know that they've put things in place to help us, their descendants, to get there. So I look at it as her saying, I fully, at 80 something years old, I fully recognize the full length and breadth and depth of my work, of my sacrifices, of the sacrifices that people have made for this destiny. And I am satisfied and I'm good with it. And I am okay with not going because I know that, my ashes will go at some point. And that for me is enough.
I like that spin. I don't fully accept it only because of I'm going to read what the text says so we can remind ourselves, and then I'm going to read what Butler says in the interview. And the way you're reading it does sound hopeful, does sound like, yeah, I'm going to stay back and I'm going to let my descendants in a way live the life that I have fought for them to live, right? So I totally get that. But let's look at it's 405 in my book, and it's from the Journals of Lauren Olamina, Thursday, July 20th in 2090. That's a long time away. She says, I know what I've done. I have not given them heaven, but I've helped them. I've helped them to give themselves the heavens. I can't give them individual immortality, but I've helped them to give our species its only chance at immortality. I've helped them to the next stage of growth. That's all good. They're young adults now, leaving the nest. It will be rough on them out there. It's always rough on the young when they leave the protection of the mother. It will take a toll, perhaps a heavy one. I don't like to think about that, but I know it's true. Out there, though, among the stars on the living worlds we already know about, and on the other worlds that we haven't yet dreamed of, some will survive and change and thrive, and some will suffer and die. Okay. Butler says, that's why at the end of, let's see where I'm at. Okay. That's why at the end of Talons, my character says, I know what I've done. She does not feel that she said everything right and they are going to some paradise in the sky. She recognizes that probably a lot of them are going to die and they're taking their problems with them. But she hopes the distraction of surviving on another world will enable them slowly to grow into something better. So ultimately, this whole thing has been a distraction, a belief, and a distraction to kind of give them the strength. If you're distracted by the bad stuff, you're going to be looking over here and hoping it's good. But Lauren is also saying they're going to struggle no matter what, right? They're going to struggle in space, and some people aren't going to make it. She's not going to know who's not going to make it, because by the time she makes it, it would be her ashes. So she don't have to deal with the repercussions of this whole thing. She doesn't have to deal with it, right? So she even says, I don't want to think about that. I don't want to think about the consequences of my actions. I don't want to think about any of that because this is still my childhood dream. And I really like the illusion of it, even though people who step into it might die. That's the line that I'm struggling to cross over, right? Like, yeah, lactose intolerant, yeah, they're gonna struggle on Earth too. And there is a line in the book where a character is saying, we have enough struggles on Earth. Why do you want to go to space and struggle? You don't even know what's out there because you've never even been out there, right? And we'll see the struggle in Dawn about what happened. So I don't know. I'm struggling to see it as hopeful. I think that there is an element of hope, but I also think that she needs to be accountable for this, right? That's all.
So for me, what I thought was, um, when they talked about her not going and everything, and we got Larkin, basically just blaming her mother and being very cold about it or whatever else, and comparing Earthseed as like the other child, and she chose Earthseed over her. I thought it was, the way I interpreted it was, she was choosing Larkin. She was choosing to stay. She was choosing to stay behind because if she's really just choosing Earthseed, she would have left. And so to me, it felt like this is like it felt like through what was written, and it was not a lot of detail, but it appeared that she tried over the years to reach her daughter, that she tried to have some sort of semblance or whatever else. And Larkin was like, well, you're going to try to take Uncle Mark away from me. And you're going to try to say all this kind of, all these different things. I know we're not going to Mark yet, but what I kept thinking was, so Earthseed now is off and that has been realized. And now she can turn back to Larkin and try to see if there was something in. That's how I interpreted it. I did not interpret it where she was like, I'm abandoning these people. I didn't think anything negative about that. I didn't think anything around like, why wouldn't she go? And I'm like, she's 81 years old. Like I just thought like there was, I really honestly kept thinking to myself, well, there is only so much she can do. I mean,
no, you can go. You see it through.
well, I don't know. I don't see why. I think maybe that was her point. She never said she never said, I'm gonna get to another planet and I'm gonna restart everything. Like she said, their mission was to go to outer space. Right. That was their destiny. That was their destiny. That happened. She achieved her destiny.
No.
She didn't have to go.
She achieved her destiny at the cost of other people, though, and that's getting us back into last week, right? And
I don't see that. I mean, but again, this is why I understand people saying about the door roll, but again, you choose the power of, you have free will to make a decision to decide to go or to stay. There were people who went, and there were people who stayed. And Doro would have made it so that you didn't have no damn choice. You just would have went. You would have.
Do not do that, T. Do not do that.
Doro, you just would have went. There was no choice. Doro never gave you a choice. There was no free will. So there's an opportunity. I'm sorry, but I mean,
I'm just saying. All I
she has some Doro tendencies, but she was not Doro. I'm sorry.
According to
parallel, I'm wondering if, because Octavia used a lot of biblical things to kind of bring home her point, and it kind of reminded me of the story of Moses, that he did all that work getting them out of Egypt, going into the desert, and then he actually never got to go to the promised land. But God actually told him to go up on the mountain and die. He did not go into the promised land with everybody else. So I'm wondering if she is mirroring Moses.
But I think the difference with that story is that he didn't go because of disobedience, because he struck the rock and God said, speak to the rock. And there was he was trying to display something else. And I think that's a more theological debate. But he didn't make it in because his God said, you didn't obey me when I was trying to tell you to do something. And now you cannot go. But Lauren is God loosely in this, right? And why wouldn't you go? And for her, and I'm looking at this, she's talking about this is my immorality. Like, if they go, I'm immortal. That is the whole goal for her. She wants to be immortal, and even her body going to another planet, deceased body, her ashes being planted. It is something poetic about it, but you want immortality. You don't want to die. And you have coerced everyone into believing this thing, right? Because even Larkin, or the lady she was with, said she was seductive. She can seduce you. She knew how to manipulate you. Even Lauren says, basically admits, I know how to manipulate this situation, right? Okay, I'll take coerce back, manipulate it. Those were Lauren's words, Shanandi. But she knew how to get her way. That's what I'm saying, right? And for her to not go, we can say we can paint it any way we want to paint it. We can make it sound beautiful in any way we want to, but the truth is that she did not go, and she let them go, knowing that they may not have been prepared and they would have to face the unknown by themselves.
But you don't think they knew that?
Wait,
To me,
hold
the people who went, they knew that. Like, how did they not know? Like, if you,
Tina.
it wasn't, she didn't build the air, she didn't build the spaceships or any of that other kind of stuff. She gave you a vision and a mission. So you don't think you think it's gonna be easy?
No, what I'm saying is no one, up until we got to this point, did y'all think she was going to the stars with them?
No, I didn't.
I did.
Everyone who's reading it for the first time is saying,
I didn't think anyone was going to make it to the stars. That's
but
why I was so excited for the end, because I didn't think anyone. I thought this is a pipe dream. It's a good vision, and she's looking for her kid, and she's trying to reestablish her community. Um, but no, I didn't think anyone was going to make it to the stars. I didn't think she was going to be able to get the funding she needed. So that's why for me, it was a great ending, and so yeah.
I'm going to let Taichi come in right after I say this. If someone is telling you that this is our vision, this is our mission, this is what we believe in, and you're coming along to support the vision and the mission for what you believe in, why wouldn't you believe in what the person is saying, and knowing that they're going to carry you to this point? That's how every code is born. That's how every movement is going. Whether I think it was, well, I know it was a literal going to the stars, but even if it was a metaphorical, we're going to the stars, you expect the leader who has implanted the seed to carry you into this place, not to back out at the last minute or say, oh, I'm not going to go, I'm too old. That's crazy to me. Taichi.
Hi, everybody. Tina, you my girl, and I usually agree with you. But one thing you said that kind of struck me, which is why I wanted to come on, is that you said that nobody had a gun to their head and nobody was forced. And I want us not to diminish the impact that, quote unquote, I don't know what to call this at this because this is fiction, but like spiritual leaders or motivational speakers can have on people. That is a sort of power to get people to believe in what you believe in. And she's very good at that. No, nobody had a gun to their head, but if you make me believe something so strongly because I believe in you and I see what you're saying and you make it convincing enough, then it's going to be my belief too. And I'm going to follow you to, wherever you're gonna, wherever you think we should go. Like a lot of people were calling her, like the way they bowed to her, and even though there was nobody higher than the other person, because that's how everything started. That's how Christianity started. There wasn't supposed to be all this hierarchy, but eventually people, which is what I put in the Substack, and things get skewed, and the original vision doesn't get, everything gets just, I guess, thrown for a loop because people want to be important, and you can't be important if everybody's on the same level. But if you're making me buy into your vision so strongly, like everybody else would not, like, why wouldn't I follow you to the stars? Why wouldn't I follow you to the moon? Why wouldn't I think everything would be okay? Because we're basically worshiping the ground you walk on. I don't want us to diminish the power that people have just because Doro could have made you. This is a different type of strength. This is a different type of belief where you'll go willingly. You don't have to. And that, I think, is as impactful as having a gun to your head or having a pattern placed on you.
I think that I agree with you in terms of like that people can be seduced or you can be coerced to seduced to be able to do those things, but for me fundamentally it is a difference when you don't like you don't have the ability to choose something else. I feel like if you're in that situation and you believe and you think that this is the right thing to do, you are choosing that. This is what I believe I need to do. This is what's important to me. I have bought in 100% in this vision and everything else. You're choosing to do that because there were people who were right beside them who chose different.
But there were also because okay, so if we're going with the current times and the current mindset, is you're choosing her or you're choosing the crystal fascism you came from that let you down because you did believe that at one point as well, which is some of the people who like stayed like some of the people who stayed were what was it, Jared? That's his name? Okay, so we're Jarrett supporters, and then they were just like, "Oh man, this is failing us. This isn't working." Like and they got angry with him, and it was just like at that point, those were your two options if you're looking at the earth and you're looking at the future on what you're gonna go. So she had a lot of converts, I believe, from that, and it's so if you're looking at those only two options and you're like, I have to make a decision because this is my future. I don't think they had a choice. And that also lends to the strength of being coerced one way or another. So I don't know. It's
a sticky thing,
yeah.
right? And we can't just blame age because Harry Balter, who was Lauren's age, got on that plane, not the plane, on the ship, and he was 81, and he went, as the text says, bent, gray, and smiling. So Lauren says, in her words, if I thought I could survive as something other than a burden, I will go on this one alive. You're deciding not to go because if Earthseed is functional, if it can be functional in space without you, it can be functional on Earth without you because you've planted so many Earthseed communities. Like it is a functioning society on Earth, but you're deciding not to go. And we got to kind of think we got to think critically about that. Because
Harry has one arm around Lauren, though. So
what you say?
So I said Harry has one arm around Lauren, though, because it says he stands with one arm around his granddaughter and the other around me. So I don't think he did go.
No. Let's look at this. Let me see.
Here's I guess I don't understand why it's a bad thing that she didn't go. So in my mind, I'm like, it's not a big deal that she didn't go.
I think it's a big deal because you told me to.
Why?
I don't understand that either.
You said this is our vision. You are our leader.
Larkin also did say that she died at 81, and she was 81 when the plane was. So she was very much near death.
Right,
she was almost out of here to the upper room.
You can lead from. She can lead from Earth. She didn't stop being Earthseed's mother when the first flight went up. She didn't stop caring. She didn't stop investing. She was literally preparing for a speech when she died. I mean, she was still spreading the good word. She was still invested in the mission. That was her last journal entry. She could have decided, she might have decided if she had lived longer, she might have decided to go with, who knows, but she didn't abandon them. She didn't abandon the vision. She didn't abandon anything. She kept working until the day she died.
She kept evangelizing and getting them to believe in something. Look, yes, until she died. I'll give you that. Evangelizing, spreading the vision on Earth that she would never know if it can work in space. You don't know if it can work, right? You don't have the data. You just have the vision. You just have the belief. You have the know-how. You have the charisma. You have the persuasion. And you can literally say, look, our first spaceships have gone here, right? We made it to Earth, but you don't know the quality of life. You don't know how they're faring. You don't know anything. You're just interested in the vision, growing the vision. And that was my whole point last week. It's not about the people. It is about the vision. And if you, as Larkin says, if you sacrifice the people to the mission, you're no better than Doro. You're not.
Yeah.
That's just me.
No, I guess I don't get it because
Okay, it's fine.
I
Let's
don't.
go to
I mean,
Mark. I know y'all get that.
I feel like when you talk about like somebody at war or something, some other stuff, like the people who are in charge, they're not going. They're not the ones who boots on the ground. They're not the ones who are going to space. They're not the ones. I mean, you know what I mean? Like I can sell you this vision. I can talk to you about like what that means and what that can be. I can evangelize. I can raise money, but that does not necessarily mean I am the person that's there. I mean, it's to me, it's like I you can be the head of or the visionary of this. It does not mean that you then have to participate, as a I'm saying this wrong, but basically, like I think about it, look at it like a general or somebody else. You in the Pentagon, you're not on this. You're not on the front lines.
Well, even if we think of, because this book is named after the Bible, the kings went to war. And we saw what happened when the kings did not go to war and they were not leading their people into war. Like, just to use your example, the biblical kings went to war with the troops. They were on the front lines, right? And so when I'm thinking about, I understand what you all are saying about Lauren, but I'm saying she is still short-sighted in this thing to send people off to space, that she has never been on these worlds. And we see what happened in Survivor, right? And we were very critical of that text. You don't know anything about this. You just know the destiny. As long as we reach the destiny, as long as we get to another world, you say we have succeeded. We don't know, because they can land on another world. I think we'll know in dawn, but you don't know if that vision is going to make it. That's all I'm saying, right? And I think that if I am a leader of a movement and I really believe in the movement, I would want to see it through to the end, not just continue to recruit people and say, keep doing this thing and you all go ahead. I don't know how you're faring. We don't have any communication. I don't know. I wouldn't, as a leader, I wouldn't feel comfortable without experiencing the destiny that I say we believe in. That's just like when we're thinking about someone following Jesus in the Judeo-Christian faith, right? If he could not talk about the kingdom of heaven and from experience, why would you follow him and why would you trust that this man is telling the truth if he had not had the experience of it? You're leading people to their death, or you're leading them somewhere that may not work. We can talk about Mark. Somebody said, can we talk about Mark now? We can, but I don't think Lauren is a saint. I don't think she's evil. I just don't think she's a saint either, but we can definitely talk about Mark now. Now, y'all bet not come at him. If y'all not coming nowhere close to Lauren, don't come at Mark like that. No, I'm just kidding.
I'm gonna come at
I,
Mark from both angles. Both
okay,
angles.
you can go
Um,
first because I have
okay.
something to say.
So we talked a lot about how Lauren's sharing is a mental illness. Okay. But what's we haven't considered is the mental illness that maybe was passed down from her father that Lauren and Mark have. And
Okay.
that is this religion and
Mm-hmm.
their need to evangelize.
That's
It's
good.
their constant need not only to have their own beliefs, but to share that belief with others and
Mm,
manipulate others to believing what they believe.
there.
And it kind of reminds me of, in Mind of My Mind, one of the patternists or the telepaths, she was a preacher too. And she was actually feeding off of her congregation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I feel like
Mm-hmm.
both Lauren and Mark, they need to feed off of the congregations of other people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So
And
there.
I
Yeah,
think
okay. Go ahead.
and I think that where Lauren and Mark butted heads was that Mark just assumed that Lauren was going to give him her congregation.
Mm,
And that wasn't going to happen. Lauren
mm,
was not having that. Another issue that Mark came in contact with, and this is true amongst all churches, it's a different dynamic. In Earthseed, Lauren allowed people to discuss the
mm-hmm.
text, whereas Mark was just looking to give a
Mm-hmm.
sermon. This is what I say is truth, and you're going to take it as that, and there's no response
Mm-hmm.
to it.
Mm-hmm.
So he got very upset with the format that she was having. But both of them have this same type of disorder. They really want people to listen to what they have to say,
Mm-hmm.
and not only listen, but to agree and to follow them. And this is my issue with Earthseed as well,
Uh-oh, you cutting out.
And she was talking good too. She was talking
Right.
good. That was good.
Hello, you there? Hello, caller.
Supplies to colonize.
Okay, girl, you cut out. You gone.
Did I get my back?
Yeah, you
Yeah.
did. You was telling us
Okay.
about your problem
And
with Earthseed.
I
So
was
pick up
saying,
there. Your problem with Earthseed.
who's to say that Earthseed couldn't be used in the future to colonize someone else, to put collars on someone else and say, well, God has changed, zap with the collar, or God is chaos, zap with the collar. People can use any type of religion to enforce their will and harm others. It's just their justification. And I think that that was the issue with Mark and all the bad things that he did with her. It was just getting back to her because he was very upset that she didn't just give her congregation to him. And they both desperately needed the attention of people.
Mhm.
And so that's what's happened.
I want to just read one thing from the archive note. She says, the group Earthseed is splitting off to colonize planets. To your point, who's to say that Earthseed would not just be used to colonize? And right here in Butler's Nerd, she's talking about Earthseed as a colonizing tool.
I also want to add to her point. I want to piggyback because that was good. He was talking real good. Mark's anger also stems from, and I say this as a Christian, the Christian's notion about women's place in the church. How dare you? It was a how dare you. And also the thing that some of the old school people do is that, oh, what I'm telling you is right and true and you can't question, when it never says that in the text. It never says that in the text. So that's what I mean when people are gonna eventually people, because they did it with, every religion. They do with every religion, even Islam. People are gonna people. They're gonna create different sects. Everybody has their, loose interpretation about what was originally a good thing, because there are some doctrines that we, kind of carry out today that are in the Bible. It's not to say that it's bad or it's good or it's a collection of truths, whatever it is that you believe. It like, you had this good thing or this thing that was seemingly good, and then eventually people started peopling. And now it's utter chaos. But Mark, you shisty scoundrel of a man, you took that girl baby and you didn't say anything. And the fact that you found her, I don't know, it was kind of, I'm going to preface this by saying, let me back up. I thought that what they were going to reveal is that Mark sent those people to Acorn to get them people. I thought it was going to be that bad. So this, not to say that this wasn't bad, but I thought he was going to be low down, because that is how he left. It's how he left. Because I recognize that. It's how he left. So I thought that he was going to tell them people, hey, I know, the religious sect Earthseed, they're up at Acorn. Here are the coordinates. Send me the cash. I thought that was going to be, the great reveal. But the fact that you took this lady's baby, and I don't know, I think there's a lot there that she kind of left out about how he came to know that it was her, not just by singing. Like, I'm sorry, I don't buy that. Like, I feel like he put in more work than he let on to find her. Found her and then kept her, which was low down. And then also, because he had the resources then, right? Lauren eventually got the resources by her rich friends that believed in, everything that they were doing, which kind of want to talk about them too, because I feel like that's how lobbyists kind of choose their leader. Like, hey, I'm going to invest in you. And then they push them up and they become president, whatever. Anyway, I feel as though that she eventually got her rich friends and she was able to sue and things like that. But I don't know. I guess part of Lauren's resentment was like, if Mark found me, why didn't you find me fast enough? So I see that, but he was low down. That was low down.
I agree. He found her at 2, decided she was better with Christian America.
Right.
Then made himself
and didn't say a word.
It's almost like he kidnapped her.
Yeah.
Kidnapped her. That's how much hatred he had for his sister, that he kidnapped her child, knowing that all the times that she's asked him for help, to find her child, and he knew exactly where she was. And this was worse than him turning Acorn over to the Crusaders. To
So
me, this was worse. This was personal. This was pure hatred.
Shanadi, I want to ask you this then, and anyone can answer this after, but you just said something. You said he hated his sister. Did he hate his sister, or did he hate the opposing ideology, the other god, the witchcraft that he believed she was?
I think it was both. I think he hated what I think it was Taichi who said that him knowing what he knows about where a woman's place is in ministry, and him wanting to take over Acorn when she rescued him wanting to take over, and her saying, "I'll give you a chance," and then blame when his quote unquote sermon didn't go well and wasn't well received, and he was being asked to back up his message, and he wasn't able to, and he saw her commitment and the people's commitment to her. He hated her. He got jealous, and this is a girl that protected him when he was a child, and went and found him and bought him back. But he could not get past the fact that she is a girl, she's a woman, she's my sister, and she has this thing, this popularity that I want, and she will not allow me to be me, even though, it's like a man saying, "Well, you won't let me be a man." No, that is not the case. You choose how you act. As someone said, misogyny. That's exactly what it was. Misogyny and hatred.
I don't know. And the reason why I'm asking this is what Erica or Ebony. I don't remember which one is your name. Is it Erica or Ebony? She brought up Ebony. Thank you, Ebony. She brought up they're at war, but they're only at war because of their ideological beliefs. Right? He is Christian America. He wants to thrive on this power. She is Earthsea, which is kind of seen as an other type of religion that should not be mainstream according to him. And so I'm wondering, because if he hated her, he wouldn't have been calling her to try to apologize, right? I don't think it was hate for her, his sister. I think it was, she needs to be raised, and this is a religious thing, she needs to be raised in a godly way. And as Larkin said, when he found her, he felt that she was being raised by good Christian parents. So why would he, disrupt that home? Now, that's not his call. I'm not even making an excuse for that, but I'm saying I don't think it was the person. I think it was the power or the religion behind it. That's what I think.
So I think that Mark had pretty privilege.
Yeah. I was going to say that next, Tina. You got it.
Right. He had seriously, he had pretty privilege. And he
Okay.
says people naturally saw how beautiful he was or how attractive he was, and that gave him a lot of power. They allowed him to preach. He had all these people who were throwing themselves at him or giving him this kind of stuff. He was accepted because he was pretty.
Okay.
And so when he came, and his father, when you talk about the Waldorf community and sorrows, and he talked about like how their father had the he was like one of the pillars in that community because he did the preaching, but he also was one of the people who figured out like, okay, these are the drills we should do. We should do all of this kind of stuff. And so he sees that his sister, who is not pretty, his sister has built Acorn. And Acorn, even if it was like old fashioned or whatever else, it was a thriving little small community, which is what he thought he could do. And he felt like, I can get in, I'm gonna make this presentation, and they're gonna be persuaded, because he had already started seeing the young ladies kind of like trying to get at him. So he thought they were gonna just like love what he was saying, and he couldn't handle it. And that, I think that the real is like, I'm sorry, I'm gonna say it anyway. I hope I don't get myself in trouble. But when you're a mediocre person, mediocre man, and all of a sudden there is excellence standing right next to you, you do everything you can to tear that down. And so to me, that's what it felt like. It felt like she built all this, she did all of this, and we go. And you keep saying like a good Christian home. It was not a good Christian home. It was a Christian American home. No, it was. I mean, I think this is really important. It's a Christian American home.
Yeah.
And the Christian American thing. Like he knew there was all this shade. He knew it was all this shady stuff going on. He knew that it was all this stuff. And if he took her seriously and really honestly wanted to do that, he would have to give up the power that he had. Because you can't say, oh no, these people are really good people if you know they stole her child. And he was on this whole thing about like these are outside crusaders. They're not a part of the system. He knew better than that. He knew.
So when I say good Christian home, I'm just referring to the alignment of the Christian America in the text, right? The alignment with the religion. So I don't think they're good, but by Christian standards or by Mark's view of Christianity and Christian standards and not being in the witch cult or whatever with Lauren, by his standards, they were good Christian people. Now we know the difference. We know they were not good because we have Larkin's story, right? But from the outside looking in, from him observing, not knowing the intricacies of her life, this is a good home. She should be raised by our father's religion, or underneath our father's religion, or as close as possible to how we were brought up, because this is what we were supposed to do. My sister is a deviant. She has gone off. She's a witch, all the things, right? So I'm not excusing any of his behavior. I think it was shady, and he deserves what came to him.
Mark was very upset that Lauren was poking holes in his reality.
Yes.
Christian America was what he needed to get power.
Yeah.
Christian America helped him get that congregation that he needed.
Okay.
So he was very upset that Lauren was poking holes in his reality. And then he was also in competition with her. He used his pretty privilege and also patriarchy, the way that Christian America viewed as women, to get power. And he saw that Lauren achieved what she achieved as a woman. And, a not very attractive woman.
So Mark used his looks.
So he felt like, I feel like he felt like taking her daughter was his get back.
Yep.
I feel like for Mark though, I think the power is a byproduct. I don't think that is his initial beef with Lauren. For him, being able to preach his Christianity is his identity. It is,
I was waiting for you to say that.
When we re-meet him, that's the only thing he can talk about. Like, I was preaching as a little boy. This is what kept me going. So when he was giving his sermon and those people was asking him questions about the text and what it looks like in practice, and he could not answer them because they were questioning who he was as a person. And then when Lauren met him at that shelter and was like, your people came and did some really bad stuff to Acorn and they took my daughter, he couldn't believe it. He didn't want to believe it because that's his identity. Those are his people. And even when he realized that, okay, she's telling the truth, he went to run and find his niece, or like that's what ended up happening. And he feels like Lauren is always going to be a reminder that he cannot be who he thinks he is because there are other people who are quote unquote like soiling Christianity. He doesn't want to think about that. He just wants to think about the good of Christianity and kind of, or like, Christian America, and keep it pushing.
So let me just, the through line of what everyone is saying is what each person is married to. And the question was, does he hate the sister or does he hate the power associated with her faith? Because the question is, was this an act of hate, right, towards his sister or the thing that she was building and this thing? Because I think we can separate the person from the movement. And what you all are getting at, what's underneath of everything y'all are getting at is, it doesn't seem that he hates her as a person, as his sister. He hates what she represents and it's contradicting what he believes. So he hates that conflict.
Yeah, but he also hates her because if he loved her, he would have told Larkin about her.
Not if it's not about love. It's about, do he hate her?
It's
But
definitely he hates her because I love that she brings out, what happened to you, the Crusaders, they did it to me. The only difference is they did it to me longer. And I don't think she said that accidentally. I think she needed to drive home to the point because both of them hated each other, that what happened to you happened to me longer because she knows that that would make him happy because he hates her. And even when she was talking to him and he was like, "Oh, I want to teach Acorn," she said in her head, if it weren't for me, like you would still be a slave and a whore. And that's honestly animosity. Like that's so much hatred that she had for this guy that was once her favorite sibling. But to say that and to never say it to his face or to say it out loud, but to have that opinion, it makes sense why at the end of the story she's like, I will never forgive him for what he did for hiding my child from me, because that's the truth. They always hated each other.
How do we get they always hated? Like, where do we get the support in the text that they hated each other, like always?
So for me, it starts. I think it's chapter 9, where where he really wants to teach to Acorn. So he's like, "Can I do it?" And she's like, "Sure." And she's just like, "You know what? If something has to be done, if a difficult thing has to be done, it's better to do it soon." And so then he does what he has to do. He preaches to them, but she says. She calls him a slave and a whore. Like, that's not loving. That's not kind. Like, that's hatred.
So she hates him. You're saying that these are some of the beginnings of her forming.
Some of the beginnings of, that sort of animosity. Like,
so someone in the chat said, "What does it matter if his actions were still horrible? The intent matters. Motive matters, right?" If Lauren, in the same chapter, I think that McSam is reading from or references, she says, "I knew he wasn't ready, but he needed to fall." Her motive was to embarrass him, right? To teach a lesson. So her motive was wrong there. Motives matter. So I'm asking, which one is it? Because if I hate the person, I am going to literally try to destroy them, and I'm going to tell Christian America about them because I don't like you. If there is a conflict in the movement and we're having conflicting beliefs, but there's still some sibling love there, I may not like you, but I love you and I still want to protect you, but I also am married to my beliefs, then I can kind of understand why he went that way. So that's why I'm trying to get to see where we're landing.
I think that
he attempted to kill her in chapter 18. Like, when those guys tried to kill her, that was because of Mark.
If Mark had come to her in Acorn and said, I want to present this message, I have something to say, will you let me? And she had said, I don't think you're ready, I think you're going to fail, I don't think, can you give it a few more weeks? He would have reacted badly.
We don't know that.
From the way he's written, I think he would have reacted badly. So, and when he came to her, she did not say, she said, okay, I will give you your chance. And she didn't speak to anyone to say, to put roadblocks in his way. She didn't do any of that. She said, okay, here's your chance. Do your thing. And he did his thing. It wasn't well received. And she, and she knew that and she was right. But she wanted to give him the opportunity to do it. And she didn't.
No,
she would not have talked out to him.
She would not
have given him the opportunity, I think.
She says her motive once after she says, okay, you can go ahead. She's like, I know he's not ready. I'm going to I am going to, no, whether it's not about right, girl. What I'm trying to get at, because I'm not going to let Lauren make it, y'all. I'm not letting up off her neck. I'm just going to tell y'all this. But what I'm getting at is you kind of led your brother out there to fail because you wanted to teach a lesson, right? You wanted to say, go ahead and fail and let me show you how ready you're not. Teach a harsh lesson. I don't think they hated each other. That's just my point. Like, they may have disliked each other. Like, McSam does have some great points. Someone in the chat said if she hated her brother, she would not have rescued him. That's a good point as well. I just think the religion, the pollution of different ideologies is what gets people apart. That's what I'm saying.
So here's the thing that here's something I want to say is that the reason why I made a big deal about saying not a good Christian home is because Christian America is a cult. Like, they present Earthseed as a cult, but Christian America is a cult because they're not necessarily following quote unquote traditional Protestant belief system in terms of what they're saying when they talk about the doctrine, when they talk about all of this other kind of stuff. It is like a cult. So that's all and this is a place, and he talked about how he felt special when he was preaching in the garage, and he was doing all this thing. He felt like he was somebody, and people looked at him and found him to be all of these things, like he had value and worth, right? And then when he was, unfortunately, when he became enslaved, and he basically, tricked on the slave that tried to get away, because he's the one that told.
Okay.
He's the one that told. He hates himself. He's like conflicted. And then he gets to Acorn, and Acorn has the makings of what is important to him. It has these people who are willing to listen. And if they will listen to, my sister, they're going to fall in love with me. They're going to, and this is trying to build my self-worth up to be somebody that's important and everything else.
Okay.
I'm gonna say she let him do what he wanted to do, and she knew he was going to fail. She could have did an olive leaf, said whatever, but I think that would have been backfired. And she knew that was going to crush. He already was fragile in his spirit, and now that's going to crush him to the point that he has to leave. He's never going to let her take away what he found to feel whole. So when she comes and she tells him all these truths, he doesn't want to believe it. If he admitted to her that it wasn't his thing, his reaction, the thing that got me, that I thought was just diabolical on him, is that when he said to her, why don't you just join us? And these are the people that raped me for 17 months. They enslaved me. They're cargo. And she brings that back, and she bring that back up to him. And she says, that's like me telling you, go back to Cougar or whatever his name was, when you were enslaved. And he got offended by that.
Okay, let's pause there. Let's pause there, because this is great.
I want to ask you a question, though. A question to your question. And it's really quick, I promise.
Me?
Yes. Because you're saying, do they hate each other, or is it the ideologies that are hating each other? My question to you is, if their identities are rooted in their ideologies, isn't that the same thing? Don't they hate each other?
No. Tina, I got you, Tai Chi. Tina, you brought up a good point. He said, why don't you join us? She says, because you all have raped us and you all have done this. And you feel that he was wrong to ask that. But when I brought up last week, when I said she asked them to endure rape again to survive, y'all let it slide. Y'all said it wasn't the same thing. She's asking them to survive. Mark is asking her to do the same thing. What's the difference?
She was never going to. He said, maybe you get in here.
It's the same thing.
Very different.
Yeah.
White side, they're both narcissists.
Kiss straight.
What did you say,
what?
Ebony?
They're both narcissists. They're just at the opposite sides.
There is no difference in Mark saying, yes, they may have done that, but you joined us to survive. If you don't like it, join us to survive. And Lauren saying, I know you all are rape victims. Sorry if this word is triggering. I know you all are that, but you need to endure it to survive. They're both saying the same thing that's not right.
The difference is context, though. The difference is context. Look. So here is, they've already been collared. They are enslaved. There is no doubt that they will be raped. There is no doubt that this is coming. To me, what she was saying is, this is our reality. We're going to have to figure out a way to get through this. This is going to happen to us. Let us learn all the tricks that we can. Let's get all the information that we can. This is our reality. Here she was. She had again not only freed him but freed herself from the Crusaders, and she is now living free, living a difficult life but free. And he's saying, go back to your oppressors. Go back to the people who raped you and stole your child.
And that's the same thing Lauren is saying. Allow them to do this again. I know they didn't do this to you at first, But to survive this group allowed them to do it again.
Allow them to do it again. Where does
By
it say
saying
that?
don't resist, that's saying allow. Give in.
Once they're free, she's not saying go back. She's just saying like
No.
Get out
survive
of here,
through
y'all.
it.
Y'all
No,
gonna defend this
I
black
feel
woman.
like that's
One side,
important.
Rape
Y'all
is
gonna
a
defend this
tool.
black woman,
Is
and it's wrong. This bad behavior, y'all.
it's just advice. She's just advising them. They don't have to
Mark
listen to her.
advised.
She's just
Mark was giving advice.
Mark betrayed her.
He advised. Come
Lauren
to
didn't
Christian
betray
America.
the
We're
girls.
talking about this moment, guys. This moment, not what he did with the kid. This moment, these two scenes.
The only
Putting them
reason
side
why
by side.
they
What's
have
the difference between Lauren telling, at that point, she had not been raped or had that experience. So what's the difference between her saying, endure, we know you have a history of this, but for the sake of living, endure.
But she wasn't saying that only to the people
Can
who
I
had
ask you a
been raped
question?
before. She wasn't just saying that only to those people who had been raped and rescued. She was saying that to everybody.
At that point,
At
those are
that
the only two
point,
people. Okay,
yeah,
y'all.
at that point, she was saying to
I'm not giving Lauren a pass.
this is our situation. This is our situation. This is our reality. We know that this is what they do. We will be raped. There is no doubt about it. We need to survive this.
June, July says the collar was the difference, but there is an invisible collar on their necks right now. There is a collar on everyone's neck in this text at some point. So to me, it's the same thing. We just feel a different way because whose mouth it came out of. And I think that's the
Can I ask a
difference.
question? So my question is, I'm the leader, or I'm the so-called leader in this space. I know that horrible things are going to happen. We see that the resistance to this collar could make you dead. So what's the right thing say to resist and then everybody die?
Sometimes death is better than
She would rather her not say anything at all. I think that's her point. Is that leadership is to remain silent.
No, I am saying that you cannot give a blanket statement to a group of people and saying you endure this because we're coming from different perspectives. At that point, those two girls were the only ones who had been sexually abused. So her blanket leadership statement to the group, endure, that advice would land differently on people who had a history of having their bodies taken from them. And so whether we see it as good faith, good intentions or not, now we have her brother telling her the same thing.
No, not the same thing.
Look, she's coming to him for help, just like her people came to her for help. She's looking at him as a leader in Christian America saying this. He says, okay, join us. She's married to her movement. He's married to his movement. There is no difference here.
I think
Up a conversation that Lauren and Mark had. Lauren and Mark had a conversation, and Lauren had went to him, and she was asking about Larkin, and he was very upset. And he said, you don't really care, that you are just saying this because you think you're supposed to care. And I think that was reflection from him because he is also cold and unattached to people. And it's coming back to the message is what matters and not the people. And this is why I'm not really giving Lauren a pass, because I believe with both of them, it's the message. It's about the evangelism, and it's not necessarily about the individuals.
She went to him and said, help me find my child. He turned around and said, come back to your oppressor. Like, I can't square that. I can't.
He wanted a one leg up on her. Him telling her to come under Christian America would be like him bowing or her bowing to him, and because he's the male in that situation. He's higher in the hierarchy.
And he knew where her kid was at this point. He knew. You know, the cruelty. My God.
Well, we don't know if he knew at that point because I think that's their first meeting.
Oh yeah, you're right. Yes.
Yeah. So we don't know at that point, but I do agree that it's cruel, and I do agree that it's maybe kind of weighing on our conversation here. But as Ebony pointed out, the way that he is speaking to her and the way he sees her, and even her daughter, she says she had always been willing to sacrifice others to what she believed was right. So they're both willing to sacrifice each other or other people for what they believe is right. So it is the belief system. they don't care about people. They care about the belief.
But
That's
I think that she cared about her brother though, and that's why I said before that like I wanted to walk back the like hate thing a little bit
okay. Okay.
because I do feel like Lauren was able to separate her brother from his religion because she went to him as you are my brother and I need your
Sure.
help to find my kid, right?
Sure.
But I think for him, he was not able to do the same for Lauren because he felt like, oh, that's a cult, that's not proper, that's not right. So when she realized that he knew about where her daughter was and that they had been a family for years, that's when I think that she decided that, oh no, now I hate him because he has just become the very people who did all of those bad things to me before. Like he is just the same now. There is no separating. And that's when he realized that he should have been separating because then he realized, oh wait, I miss my sister and like I want to keep this relationship. But he was no longer able to do that because he burned that bridge.
Okay. Delilu.
Alia.
Dahlia, sorry, help me
Yes, that's okay. That's not my name. That's fine.
back. Go ahead.
No, I've just been thinking about everything everybody's saying. For me, I just keep going back to why in this situation, and maybe this is kind of zooming out a little bit, why is it that these two ideologies need to be combating each other? Like, why such, like Earthseed, like what we were talking about earlier, why was it so adamant that they had to be amongst the stars? You know what I mean? Like, she was so grounded in survival. I felt like she knew so much about the earth and she was so invested in knowing about seeds. I just find it so interesting that her mind went to, well, actually, we're going to go amongst the stars. And then on Mark's end, I'm just so fascinated that, yes, like the father was Christian, he was a pastor, but why the pull towards the fundamentalism? Like, why not, you know what I mean? Um, why did they both go to such extreme ends, I guess?
Yeah, I think.
Um,
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
no, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, like, I think that Lauren saw her father's religion young as not being worth it, as she says in Parable of the Sower. Like, it's not a functioning religion. It's not gonna save us.
Right.
We need to break away from this thing. And I think at the time that Mark's dad died, he was still young, so he didn't have the experience that she had. He wasn't as red as she was. So when everything goes to hell, generally people turn to religion.
For
Generally, that's
sure.
what happens.
But I feel as though her father's religion, not that it was perfect by any means, or not that it's, to me, it reminds me of, the Black church traditionally, in terms of having a little bit more of a social justice grounding to it, and just being on, like, firmly planted on the earth, and caring about people. So it's just interesting to me that he embraces this very, like, white supremacist, fascist Christianity, um
Yeah.
while I don't know if that makes what I'm saying makes sense.
Yeah, I think the way
um
to maybe think about it is what happens when people. I think about it in gangs, right? If you are,
right,
alone, and they target people who don't have family and do not feel like they're cared about, and they target these people so that they can bring them into a family. So I don't know if he had that proximity to He
right,
probably did. He probably went to white Christian America when he left Earthseed. You know what I'm saying?
yeah, because
So.
I'm looking at, yeah, even his, like, his preaching at the gathering,
Mhm,
he's so, even if he had approached it from the angle of, you know not so much about, well, she's wrong because this is your immortal soul, but just Jesus's teachings, period. Because
he,
that's where Jesus was. He was very, yes, he talked about the kingdom and everything, but I feel like he was very focused on solving people's everyday problems. Like, here, you're blind.
yeah,
Here you go. You're healed. Look at
yeah,
this one. I think he's dead. Oh, actually, he's up. These
yeah,
people are hungry. You know what I like? So before he started going off about the kingdom, he was very focused on their, like,
Yeah.
hear their needs, which I think Lauren kind of does, and kind of how she like pulls people. It's just that, you know, her emphasis then becomes about, well, this earth is not going to work out.
Yeah.
Sorry, let's go to the stars. While his, I don't know. I
Let's
don't know if
save the earth.
I'm
Let's save the people we got on earth. So hers is let's
right.
escape. He is let's
Yeah.
reform here. I get that.
It's like,
But with that Christoph, like, I mean, maybe this is not where we were going in this part of the conversation. It's just what was on my mind. Like, why did he go so extreme? And I guess those were, I mean, that's what's around him, and he's been traumatized. So obviously, it makes sense for him to join that. Um, but I don't know. I feel like there was potential. I mean, this is the different story, but potential for, well, this is what our dad taught us. This was
Mm-hmm.
Jesus's
Mm-hmm.
teachings.
Mm-hmm.
These were the stories.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's just interesting that it went so extreme on both their ends, I guess, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree.
so, when I was a child, I don't know how many of you had this experience, but I got kicked out of Sunday school. And I got kicked out of Sunday school, and I got kicked out of another church that I was in because you asked too many questions.
Oh, I see.
So when the difference with, and this is why I keep saying like the Christian American is a cult, because you can't, if you're in a church where you can't ask questions, it's a
Mm-hmm.
cult. You
I
should
agree.
be able to question or be able to try to come up with your own ideas or whatever else. And what he wanted was nobody to ask him a question other than thank you and what can I do to help you. So like I just, so that's my issue with Mark, is that he sacrificed Larkin and Lauren so that he could have status and power. Because you got this whole program, because like if you went to the trouble to figure out where she was, then that meant you had to learn about what they were doing to those children.
Hmm.
You had to learn about what they were doing to the children. You had to learn about the system that was happening, and you definitely knew that over the years if you cared to look, if you cared to learn more about it. You had to. There's no way you wouldn't, especially as he got bigger and bigger in the church. He was not willing to sacrifice that. And then all of a sudden, he just mysteriously found her because she was singing outside. He was following her. They were
Well,
watching.
she had come to hear him.
Yeah, she came to hear him, but then he finds her, and then he does all of this stuff. He does all of this stuff, but
Mm-hmm.
she's been kicked out. Her Christian father tried to
Mm-hmm.
do and speak essay to her and all kinds of other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
He knew, but he was not willing to give up whatever it was he was having. So that's my problem with Mark, is
Mm-hmm.
that it feels like he was not going to make a sacrifice. He was not willing to make a sacrifice for his belief. Period.
Okay. I mean, I don't really have a dog in the fight. I just like to stir the pot. Um, but I really don't. But one thing I do want to say, like, we are harping on like Lauren wanting to find her. She wanted to find her, but there is a part where Butler starts to let us know that the mission was greater than Larkin in the text, right? Than her finding her. And this is, when they're going around when her and the other girl break off together and they're trying to find a new place. And she's like, well, what about finding Larkin? And she says, oh, I'm going to find her. But what was more pressing was gathering people for Earthseed, ultimately. So while she was looking, what's clear is that the more immediate thing was the mission. I just want to say that, like, the moments are fleeting, they're passing, they're not as blaring as blaring as the other moments in the text. But Butler is kind of hinting at the fact that, yeah, she loved her daughter, but she loved this baby Earthseed even the more. Yeah, she was trying to find her, but she never stopped devoting her full attention to this thing, right? And so I don't want us to miss that. And I know mothers are always,
I
they
think
have to
the
navigate between
I think
important.
the difference is I
Hold
think
on.
the difference is she could have Earthseed. She had Earthseed. Earthseed never left her, was never out of her sight. And she did not believe she was gonna find Larkin. She did not believe it.
We
She
can't
didn't
give
believe
her
it at
pass.
all.
I
She
think
kept
she.
saying it. I don't think she believed it.
I read that differently. Not like, oh, I'm gonna find her. Like, I'll find her whenever I find her. I read it as, I will find my child. Trust me. This is this. the thoughts of her are not far from my mind. Just because I'm focusing on Earthseed does not mean that I have given up on finding my child. I will find my child. I put the emphasis different, like on a different word, because
Yeah,
I
she
don't
went.
think she was giving up on her at all. Not
No,
in the
but
least.
I'm not saying she gave up. I'm saying she kept the main thing, and the main thing across all these books have been what? The destiny of Earthsea. That's what I'm saying. Like
Right.
this was the child, and this is what y'all pushed back against me last week. Like, you expect her to give this up? This is her childhood dream. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying let's just acknowledge that this was her first child and Larkin was her second.
Allie kind of fed her a little bit when she sent her Lynn, because she knew that, okay, here's someone that's down on their luck, and here's someone that Lauren will definitely feed Earthseed to. So I think that Allie kind of knew that Lauren needed that pick me up, and then Earthseed kind of took over from there. It kind of took over the search.
Earthsea gonna be the thing. Cece says, "Are we saying Mark was right?" No, we not saying. Do not get them started. We not saying that Mark was right. I'm just trying to complicate things a little bit more so that we won't just be like, "Oh no, he was wrong. He was bad." Like, we gotta kind of think through human psychology and decisions and how religion does brainwash people and pit people and families against one another, and how sometimes if you don't believe, I know people who are Jehovah's Witnesses, if you leave that, your family is done. They're not going to talk to you no more. If you are Mormon and you leave the community, you're done. And they may not hate that family member. You just do not, you've come out of agreement with the religion. And now we just have to come out of agreement with you.
Shunning. It's
Thank you.
shunning.
That's the word. Shunning. You're shunned. So I don't think it's hate. I just think it's being married to the faith.
But
It's
does
never right. Have you guys seen that video of that baby deer and what it was doing to that woman? That's what Lauren needs to do to Mark.
I didn't see it. I think I heard about it. I didn't see it, but I saw the effects of it, I think.
Only what?
Okay. Okay. It's 7:35. Do y'all got anything else y'all want to say? We didn't spend the whole hour and a half debating two things. You did. Wait,
Stance.
hold on, Tai Chi. They said y'all can't hear us
I
anymore.
can hear you. I
Oh.
can hear.
Wait a minute. I think the people who are not on the panel.
Yeah, can't hear.
Oh, they can't hear anymore?
No. They're saying that
No.
they can hear.
Okay, it says
Oh
just now
no.
came back. Okay, you can hear. Okay, Tai Chi, go ahead. Start over.
Um,
Okay, I'm gonna make it real quick. My closing thoughts are I wanted to let the record to show that one, I love how y'all love Lauren down, but I do not agree. I do not
I
agree. And I said that last time and I just don't agree. And I think that, everyone has a good intention. How they go about things is very telling. And at times she could be very cold and calculated about certain things. And, people were expendable to her. That's what I do believe. This was a good book overall. I really think that this could have been a launching pad to Survivor. Don't know why she scrapped it. I
I
see it.
agree. I see the
I see
connection
the
for
connection, but if
sure.
we're gonna read the Exogenesis series and that's really where it picks off, I'm excited to do that too. So those are my thoughts.
Okay, can
And I
someone
I
drop?
just
Wait, before we get to you, can someone drop down who may not going to speak? I think I've reached my number of participants, and lactose intolerant wants to come up here and say something. So if someone's not going to give a closing thought or something, would you mind just dropping off? dropping down to the chat so I can bring up.
How do you drop? Because you can drop me. I already spoke.
I don't know how to drop you. Let me see.
There's a spot.
Connect. Oh wait.
You
But
click
I
the
Okay.
already,
speak
There we go.
button and
Oh, I
disconnect.
didn't took people off.
you can drop me too. I'm
Okay.
done.
Okay, hold on. Dang. Okay. Okay. Go ahead, y'all.
Well, no, I was just gonna add that I think sometimes what gets lost is like the effect of her sharing on her attitude. Um, I think that I think it affects her ability to connect with people, which is strange because you would think it would make her more connected, but I think in a way it contributes to her coldness.
Okay.
That's all.
Point taken, for sure. Okay. And you think it's like a point of protection? Like,
I think so.
okay.
I think that I wish I knew how to verbalize better. I'm better at writing. I think that from the beginning, it's like she's constantly overwhelmed by other people's desires, other people's feelings. Like she's feeling, she is getting violated. The other person is feeling pleasure. She's forced to feel their pleasure while she's in pain. She sees somebody bleeding. She feels like she's bleeding too. I think that, I mean, I'm a sensitive person, but there's a point where it becomes like like I have to kind of numb myself not to feel as though I'm feeling what other people are feeling. I'm a teacher. And so sometimes I mean, I'm not a sharer per se, but there's like a barrier that I kind of have to build to kind of get business done so that, I can't be crying every time they give me a story. It's like, no, you got to write this essay. Like, what are we going to do now? Okay, that's sad. I feel you. Now we have to get this done. And I think like she's kind of behind that barrier, and then couple that with all the traumas that they've been through. You lost your whole family. Her father's her favorite person. I do think I can see how the message became more important than anything else because at the end of the day, people die, they get injured, they get hurt. She has this idea, and it seems to be growing. That's the thing that even though they go through things with it, and obviously they had obstacles, it keeps growing, it keeps getting bigger, people are listening, and so it's like the thing that doesn't go away.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Um, who else want to go? I know McSam is holding down for Lauren. She the Lauren stan.
That's so funny.
What's up? You got something?
Well, yeah, I mean, ultimately, I think, this is a way better story for Lauren than Sower was. Sower was, that was really tough, and she was going through a lot, and she was still learning, and she was still getting her bearings in Earthseed. But here, it's fully formed, fully functioning. It got her through such a horrific incident at, Camp Christian. And I'm just really happy, ultimately, to see her, get to see her vision, get to see what she wanted in the end. But yeah, ultimately, I do think it's a good ending, even though there was supposed to be more, and it was going to get a lot darker.
Yeah. And I think one thing that we didn't speak about because I stirred the pot was this Earthseed on Earth. It's a very wealthy community. Like Lauren and the community itself is wealthy. It's sustaining. They own things, right? It's kind of reminiscent in my mind, in my imagination, of Black Wall Street in a way. And so I think there is something to be said about her going from this rags to riches story, from this person who had lost everything, facing housing insecurity, not having a pot to pee in and wouldn't throw it out, like my grandma used to say, to now being at the head of a really great functioning community that is affluent, that is participating in STEM. We did not get to talk about that. Lauren is in space travel. Her daughter is in dream simulation, right? And so we didn't get to talk about a lot of stuff. But there is something to be said about the community that she did build and that's thriving on Earth. So I know that I was giving her a hard time about the people who are going to space. But there is something to be said about what she has accomplished on Earth for sure. I'm gonna give her props when she needs them. Tina, you got something? And lactose intolerant, you can share about the event.
The only thing that I would say is that I just I wish that this book, maybe there was a third one, or that explored a little bit more between Larkin and her mother, because that just, like I said, I didn't understand the level of resentment that she had for her. The only thing I could think of was that even though she didn't necessarily like Christian America, that's all she knew. And it was, and her reaction reminded me of Mark's reaction. Like, you're trying to take this foundation that I've built myself to have from me. Because if I have to deal with the fact that my Uncle Mark did these horrible things to me, you know, did this to me, then, he's the only foundation I've ever had. He's the only person I think that's ever loved me. So I think that there's a lot of kind of like displaced anger or displaced trust, and that you have to, you're 34 years old, like, she's not dealing with, okay, he kept us apart, and he didn't have to do that.
Are we talking about Larkin?
Yeah, talking about Larkin and Larkin, Mark, and Lauren.
Yeah, like,
Because he could have at any point, he could have said, no, she's here,
yeah.
and did that. He didn't do that.
Yeah, he didn't. And even at the end, though, the way that Butler writes Larkin is like, at the end of the day, he was my family. Yes, he was wrong or whatever, but at the end of the day, he was my family. And I think she put that in Larkin's mouth, or had Larkin write that, was because family was important to her. And I don't think she may have felt that with her mother, or felt like a priority with her mother when she finally met her. We don't know. There's a lot that's not on the page. But for her to write, he was my family, that meant something to her. And so, of course, we don't know. There is tension. And as I'm looking at Butler's note, she says that Lauren is action and Larkin is observation. Think of them as major and minor keys, both possessing potential but different, not compatible. So Butler is saying that this mother and daughter duo, they're not compatible. Lauren is an action person, and Larkin is the observer. Lactose intolerant, hey.
Hi, thank you. I just wanted to let anyone who is interested know that in the Los Angeles area, there's going to be an Octavia Butler event on June 7th from, I believe, 10 to 12 at the Central Library. There's a book talk with someone who just published a book about Octavia Butler and horses. I don't know. And then an event role-playing game that's supposed to mimic Earthseed. Also not sure how that's working, but sounds cool. And a zine making workshop. And it's free. You just have to register. And it's at the LA Central Library downtown. So if anyone wants to go, I'll be there. And I'd see you there. Cool. That's it.
And if you're there, I don't know if it's still open. The Octavia Lab, which is a makerspace, is really great. You all should check it out. But thank you for sharing that, because Butler's birthday is June 22nd, if I'm not mistaken. So, of course, in June, everyone has their, has their events surrounding her work. So I'm so glad the scholarship is still going forth, y'all. I'm so glad about that. Okay, so we have to get to how we're going to proceed with the rest of the class. Do y'all want to read the Xenogenesis trilogy? It's 3 books. I should have had like a poll up here. I don't remember how
What I'll say too is I do want to read it, because I just had 1 book left to go when we started this class, and I was like, I'm gonna wait to read it until we get to it. So it's literally my last Octavia Butler book that I need to read.
Y'all are crazy. Hold on, I'm trying to get us a thing. Let's get a 1 minute, 2 minutes standard. Okay, I don't even know, but the top one, yes, the bottom one, no. I don't even know it. I don't even know what the thing says, but if y'all can see that, vote on the poll, or does it give you emojis? The next series, which is Dawn, Adulthood Rights, and Imago, take place in space. Ocean 90, yeah, we gonna take that break. I just want to know if y'all want to read the next series. The poll didn't show. It's not at the top left of the screen. It should be like a little notebook.
Yeah,
Oh,
a little
hold on.
countdown too.
Hold on, y'all. Sorry. Hold on.
It says something about from the last time.
Yep, hold on. My bad. Hold on. Oh, I didn't do that. My bad. That's me. That's on me. Give me 1 second. Manage. Okay, let's just do this. Put in the chat if you want to read the next series. We're going to take a week break. So next week we won't have nothing. But put in the chat yes or no. Okay, I see a lot of yes. Okay, we'll run it like we ran it the last time. We will take a break next week, and then we will start Dawn, which is the Xenogenesis trilogy, the book that also takes place in space and also nods back to the Parable series, because every series nods. I will put the syllabus breakdown, reading breakdown on the Substack. So just pay attention to the Substack for where you need to stop. I don't have it written out or anything. We'll probably read Dawn in 2 weeks, so we don't need to do the 3-week thing that we had to do here. So we will pick back up our natural speed. So week break next week, and then we'll pick up Dawn, the first part of Dawn, the week after next. Does that sound good to everybody? Oh, y'all, I'm out here working. So June 11th will be the last time. I mean, the next time we meet. Thank y'all for the gifts. I appreciate it. TikTok be, helping the kid out. Keep sending the gifts. June 11th, we'll resume with Dawn. I will probably have the information up on the Substack, and of course, we'll just continue doing what we do. This was a good class, y'all. This was great. Thank y'all for letting me stir the pot. I will see y'all in 2 weeks. All right. Good night, y'all. Bye.
Thank you.
All right.